Your mind won't shut up. And here's what nobody tells you. That constant mental chatter, that endless stream of thoughts bouncing around in your head like ping pong balls, that's not a bug in your system. It's not something you need to fix or overcome. It's actually a feature. Your brain was literally designed to be noisy. But what if I told you there's a part of your mind that exists in complete silence? A dimension of consciousness that operates beyond thought, beyond the ego's endless commentary, beyond the mental noise that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. What if the deepest technology for accessing peace, clarity, and even altered states of consciousness isn't some external device or pharmaceutical compound, but a capacity that's been sitting dormant in your skull this entire time? This isn't mystical wishful thinking. This is neuroscience, and the findings are so profound, so paradigm-shifting, that they're forcing us to completely reimagine what the human mind actually is. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's a network in your brain called the default mode network. Think of it as your ego's headquarters, the neural circuitry that maintains your sense of being a separate self moving through time. It's the part of your brain that rehearses conversations, replays past events, plans future scenarios, and generally keeps you trapped in what we call the mental realm. But here's where it gets fascinating. When neuroscientists put Tibetan monks, experienced meditators, and contemplatives into brain scanners, something extraordinary happens. The default mode network doesn't just quiet down, it practically goes offline. These individuals can access states of consciousness where the sense of being a separate self temporarily dissolves, where time seems to stop, where the boundary between observer and observed begins to blur. They've learned to access what I call the silent mind, and the implications of this discovery extend far beyond stress reduction or relaxation. We're talking about fundamentally different ways of experiencing reality itself. The monks aren't doing anything supernatural. They're not tapping into some cosmic force or channeling divine energy. They're simply learning to navigate their own neural architecture in a way that most of us never discover. They found the off switch for mental noise. And you can too. Over the next 25 minutes, we're going to explore the emerging field of contemplative neuroscience. We'll dive into the research that's mapping the neural correlates of transcendent states. We'll examine why your mind defaults to noise rather than silence. And most importantly, we'll explore practical ways to access these deeper dimensions of consciousness in your own direct experience. But first, if this kind of content resonates with you, if you're interested in the intersection of consciousness, science, and human potential, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. The YouTube algorithm will deliver more of this content to you when you engage, because what we're about to explore isn't just information, it's transformation. The term neurospirituality might sound like New Age jargon, but it represents one of the most rigorous scientific inquiries of our time. We're witnessing the emergence of contemplative neuroscience, a field that's mapping the neural signatures of experiences that humans have been cultivating for thousands of years through meditation, prayer, and contemplative practices. Dr. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin has been scanning the brains of Tibetan monks for over 2 decades. These aren't casual meditators. We're talking about individuals who have accumulated over 10,000 hours of contemplative practice. When they enter deep meditative states, their brain scans reveal something that challenges our fundamental assumptions about consciousness itself. The default mode network, that constant mental narrator that maintains your sense of being you, shows dramatic decreases in activity. Simultaneously, areas associated with present moment awareness, compassion, and what researchers call non-dual awareness light up with increased gamma wave activity. These gamma waves, oscillating at frequencies between 30 and 100 Hz, are associated with moments of insight, breakthrough experiences, and states of expanded consciousness. But here's what makes this particularly relevant to your daily experience. Most of us, live almost entirely within the default mode network. We're constantly projecting into future scenarios, replaying past events, maintaining mental models of ourselves and others, engaging in internal dialogue, self-judgment, comparison, and planning. This network consumes massive amounts of mental energy and keeps us perpetually removed from direct, present-moment experience. Dr. Judson Brewer's research has shown that the default mode network is hyperactive in individuals with anxiety, depression, and what we might call existential dissatisfaction. The more active this network, the more likely you are to experience what Buddhist psychology calls dukkha, that subtle sense of unease, incompleteness, or existential restlessness that seems to permeate modern life. The contemplative traditions discovered something profound thousands of years ago. Beneath the surface level of mental activity, there exists a dimension of consciousness that is naturally peaceful, clear, and present. They developed sophisticated technologies, not external technologies, but internal ones, for accessing these deeper states. What's remarkable is that neuroscience is now validating what contemplatives have always known. There are learnable skills for shifting your brain into states characterized by increased present moment awareness, reduced self-referential thinking, and what researchers call effortless attention. This isn't about forcing your mind to be quiet. That's actually counterproductive. It's about learning to recognize and rest in the awareness that's already present beneath the mental noise. It's about discovering that you are not your thoughts, but the consciousness in which thoughts arise and pass away. When you begin to access these states regularly, the effects extend far beyond the meditation cushion. People report improved relationships, increased creativity, better decision-making, reduced anxiety, and what many describe as a fundamental shift in their relationship to life itself. They begin to experience themselves not as separate individuals struggling against an indifferent universe, but as expressions of the same consciousness that animates all experience. This is what I mean by neurospirituality. It's the recognition that certain states of consciousness, traditionally considered spiritual, have measurable neural correlates and can be cultivated through specific practices. We're not talking about belief systems or religious doctrines. We're talking about direct experience of expanded states of awareness. The question is, are you ready to explore what lies beyond the mental noise? Are you curious about accessing the silent mind that neuroscience is revealing exists within your own neural architecture? What's your relationship to the constant stream of thoughts in your head? Do you ever feel like there's something deeper, something more peaceful, waiting to be discovered beneath the mental chatter? Let me share something that might shift your entire understanding of what meditation actually is. Most people approach meditation like they're trying to train a wild horse. They sit down, close their eyes, and attempt to force their mind into submission. When thoughts arise, they fight them. When the mind wanders, they judge themselves. When they can't achieve some imagined state of mental blankness, they conclude they're bad at meditation. This approach is not only ineffective, it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how consciousness actually works. You cannot force your mind to be quiet any more than you can force yourself to fall asleep. The harder you try, the more elusive the state becomes. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Newbert has been studying what he calls neurotheology for over 20 years. He's mapped the brain states of Christian mystics during prayer, Buddhist monks during meditation, and Sufi practitioners during whirling. What he's discovered challenges our basic assumptions about the relationship between brain activity and consciousness. During profound contemplative states, there's decreased activity in the parietal lobe, the brain region responsible for maintaining our sense of spatial boundaries. This is why contemplatives often report experiences of unity, boundlessness, or what they describe as dissolving into something larger than their individual self. The brain literally stops maintaining the neural boundaries that create our ordinary sense of being a separate self located in space and time. But here's the crucial insight. These states don't happen through effort or force. They emerge when we learn to work with the natural tendencies of consciousness, rather than against them. Consciousness, in its natural state, is already present, already aware, already peaceful. Mental noise is what we add to this natural state, not what we need to remove from it. Think about it this way. When you're deeply absorbed in a beautiful sunset, listening to music that moves you, or engaged in flow state during a creative activity, where is the mental chatter? It's not that you've eliminated thoughts through effort. The thoughts have simply become background phenomena because your attention has become absorbed in present moment experience. This is what contemplatives call effortless effort or non-doing. It's not about making something happen. It's about allowing something that's already happening to become more prominent in your experience. Dr. Michael Mrazek's research at UC Santa Barbara has shown that just 8 weeks of mindfulness training can significantly reduce mind wandering and increase present moment awareness. But the key is understanding that mindfulness isn't about controlling your thoughts. It's about changing your relationship to thoughts. Instead of being lost in thoughts, you begin to observe thoughts from a place of spacious awareness. Here's a practical way to understand this. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's an awareness present that's noticing the words, noticing any thoughts that arise about the words, noticing sounds in your environment, perhaps noticing physical sensations in your body. This awareness isn't doing anything. It's not working hard or concentrating intensely. It's simply present, simply aware. This awareness is what contemplatives call pure consciousness or Rigpa. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's not something you need to create or achieve. It's something you learn to recognize and rest in. It's been present your entire life, but it's been overshadowed by mental activity. The default mode network, that neural circuitry that maintains your sense of being a separate self, is incredibly useful for navigating daily life. You need it for planning, remembering, solving problems, and maintaining social relationships. But when it becomes hyperactive, when it's running constantly in the background like a computer program that won't shut down, it creates what we might call existential exhaustion. Dr. Robin Carhart-Harris's research with psilocybin at Imperial College London has revealed something fascinating. Psychedelic experiences, which often produce profound states of unity and transcendence, were primarily by reducing activity in the default mode network. The more the DMN activity decreases, the more intense the experience of ego dissolution and unity consciousness becomes. This suggests that transcendent states aren't about adding something to consciousness. They're about removing the neural activity that normally constrains consciousness within the boundaries of ordinary self-awareness. But you don't need psychedelics to access these states. Contemplative practices can produce similar reductions in default mode network activity through entirely natural means. The key is understanding how to practice. Most meditation instructions focus on techniques, breathing patterns, visualization methods, or concentration exercises. These can be helpful, but they often miss the essential point. The deepest contemplative states arise not through doing something special, but through learning to rest in the awareness that's already present. Here's a foundational practice that neuroscience validates. Instead of trying to control or eliminate thoughts, simply notice the awareness in which thoughts are appearing. Thoughts arise in awareness like clouds appearing in an empty sky. The sky isn't disturbed by the clouds. It doesn't struggle to push them away or hold on to the ones it likes. It simply remains vast and open, allowing whatever appears to come and go naturally. Your awareness is like that sky. Thoughts, Emotions, sensations, sounds, all the phenomena of experience arise within awareness and pass away naturally. When you learn to identify with awareness rather than with the contents of awareness, something profound shifts in your relationship to your own experience. This isn't just philosophical poetry. When researchers scan the brains of individuals resting in this open awareness, they find decreased activity in the default mode network, increased connectivity between different brain regions, and what they call global workspace integration, a state where different parts of the brain communicate more efficiently and harmoniously. Dr. Zoran Josipovic at NYU has been studying what he calls non-dual awareness, states where the distinction between observer and observed begins to dissolve. His research suggests that these states represent a fundamental mode of consciousness that's available to anyone willing to explore beyond the boundaries of ordinary self-awareness. The practice isn't about achieving some exotic altered state. It's about recognizing the natural state of awareness that's present right now, underneath the mental noise. It's about learning to rest in this awareness rather than constantly doing something with your mind. When you begin to access this dimension of consciousness regularly, the effects ripple through every aspect of your life. Your relationship to stress changes because you're no longer completely identified with stressful thoughts. Your relationship to emotions changes because you recognize emotions as temporary experiences arising in awareness rather than threats to your identity. Your relationship to other people changes because you begin to sense the same awareness that you recognize in yourself operating through different apparent forms. This is what the wisdom traditions have always pointed toward when they speak of enlightenment, awakening, or liberation. It's not about becoming someone special or achieving some permanent altered state. It's about recognizing what you already are beneath the learned patterns of mental self-contraction. The neuroscience is simply confirming what contemplatives have always known. Consciousness is not produced by the brain like a computer program running on hardware. Consciousness is the fundamental dimension in which all experience arises, including brain activity itself. When we learn to rest in consciousness rather than in the contents of consciousness, we access states of profound peace, clarity, and what many describe as unconditional well-being. This recognition doesn't require years of intensive meditation practice. It can happen in a moment of simply recognizing what's already present, but it does require a willingness to question your basic assumptions about what you are and how consciousness actually works. The silent mind isn't something you achieve through technique. It's something you recognize by learning to rest in the awareness that's reading these words right now, that's present in every moment of your experience, that remains constant through all the changing contents of consciousness. Now, let's address something that might be creating resistance as you listen to this. You might be thinking, this sounds beautiful in theory, but my mind is way too chaotic for this kind of peace. You don't understand how anxious and overthinking I am. My thoughts never stop. I want to validate that experience completely. Most of us have been conditioned by a culture that treats mental activity as productivity, that equates thinking with intelligence, that rewards mental busyness and treats stillness as laziness or escapism. We've literally been trained to be mentally hyperactive. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's research at UCLA has shown that the average person spends 47% of their waking hours in what he calls mind-wandering, lost in thoughts about the past or future, rather than present in immediate experience. For many people, this percentage is much higher. We've become addicted to mental stimulation. This addiction has neurological basis. Each time your mind generates a thought, especially thoughts about future planning or problem solving, your brain releases small amounts of dopamine. Your default mode network has become like a slot machine, constantly pulling the lever of mental activity, hoping for the dopamine hit of figuring something out or resolving some mental problem. But here's what's crucial to understand. The thoughts themselves aren't the problem. The relationship to thoughts is what creates suffering. When you're completely identified with the stream of mental activity, when you believe that you are your thoughts, then mental chaos feels like personal chaos. Dr. Sarah Lazar's research at Harvard has demonstrated that just 8 weeks of mindfulness practice can literally change the structure of your brain. The areas associated with learning, memory, and emotional regulation increase in density, while the amygdala, associated with stress and reactivity, actually shrinks. But the deepest transformation isn't neurological. It's recognizing that you are the awareness in which thoughts arise, not the thoughts themselves. This recognition can happen instantaneously, and it changes everything. Let me guide you through a direct exploration of this right now. As you listen to these words, notice that there's an awareness present that's hearing the words. This awareness isn't working hard or concentrating intensely. It's simply present, simply aware. Now notice any thoughts that might be arising about what you're hearing. Maybe analytical thoughts, maybe skeptical thoughts, maybe curious thoughts. Notice that these thoughts are appearing in the same awareness that's hearing the words. Notice any physical sensations in your body right now. The feeling of whatever you're sitting or lying on, any areas of tension or relaxation, the sensation of breathing. Notice that these sensations are also appearing in the same awareness. Notice any sounds in your environment: traffic, air conditioning, voices, silence. Notice that these sounds are also appearing in this same awareness. What you're recognizing is that thoughts, sensations, and sounds are all appearing in one undivided field of awareness. You are not separate from this awareness. You are this awareness. The thoughts are not separate from awareness. They're modifications or movements of awareness, like waves on the surface of an ocean. When you recognize yourself as awareness rather than as the contents of awareness, something profound relaxes. You're no longer trying to manage or control your experience because you recognize that all experience is arising within what you are. This isn't a philosophical concept. It's a direct recognition that's available right now. The Tibetan tradition calls this Rigpa, the natural state of awareness that's present before mental elaboration. The Advaita tradition calls it pure being consciousness. Neuroscience calls it metacognitive awareness, awareness of awareness itself. Dr. Clifford Saran's Shamatha project, the most comprehensive study of meditation ever conducted, followed participants through 3-month intensive retreats. What they found was that the deepest benefits weren't related to concentration or relaxation. They were related to what researchers call metacognitive insight, the recognition of awareness itself as distinct from the contents of awareness. This recognition has practical implications that extend far beyond meditation sessions. When you're established in this understanding, stress becomes workable because you're no longer completely identified with stressful thoughts. Difficult emotions become temporary weather patterns in the sky of awareness rather than threats to your identity. Your relationships transform because you're no longer relating from the defensive position of a separate self that needs to be protected or validated. You begin to recognize the same awareness that you are expressing through different apparent forms: your partner, your children, even difficult people in your life. Your relationship to work and career changes because you're no longer seeking fulfillment through external achievements. You found the source of fulfillment within awareness itself. This doesn't make you passive or unmotivated. It makes you more effective because your actions arise from clarity rather than from neurotic need. Your relationship to physical health changes because you're no longer completely identified with the body as your identity. You take care of the body But you're not terrorized by every symptom or sign of aging because you recognize yourself as the awareness in which bodily experience arises. Even your relationship to death transforms because death is recognized as the ending of particular contents of awareness, rather than the ending of awareness itself. This isn't a belief. It's a direct recognition that awareness itself has no boundaries in space or time. Now, I want to address a common misconception. Some people hear about these states and imagine they need to become permanently blissful or transcendent. They think enlightenment means floating around in some cosmic bubble, detached from ordinary human concerns. This is not what we're pointing toward. The deepest awakening is the recognition that ordinary experience is the expression of consciousness. You don't need to escape from your humanity. You need to recognize the divine dimension of your humanity. When you're established in this understanding, you can be fully present with difficult emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You can engage with practical responsibilities without being stressed by them. You can love deeply without attachment. You can work effectively without identifying your worth with your productivity. Dr. Daniel Siegel's concept of mindsight describes this beautifully. It's the ability to see the mind's activities clearly without being swept away by them. It's like standing at the edge of a river, watching the water flow, rather than being carried away by the current. This capacity for mindsight, for resting in awareness while allowing experience to flow naturally, can be cultivated. But it's important to understand that cultivation doesn't mean effort. It means removing the obstacles to what's already natural. The primary obstacle is the belief that you need to do something to be aware. Awareness is not an activity. It's your natural state. Right now, without doing anything special, you are aware. This awareness doesn't depend on your mood, your thoughts, your circumstances, or your level of spiritual development. It's simply present. The secondary obstacle is the belief that awareness is personal, that your awareness is somehow separate from universal awareness. But when you investigate carefully, you can't find any boundaries to awareness. Where does your awareness end and the world begin? When you look for the edges of awareness, you find only more awareness. This recognition that awareness is both utterly intimate and completely universal is what contemplatives call non-dual recognition. It's not a philosophy. It's a direct seeing that changes everything while changing nothing. The practical cultivation of this recognition doesn't require complex techniques or years of intensive practice. It requires learning to rest in what's already present. Throughout your day, you can simply notice the awareness that's already here. While washing dishes, notice the awareness in which the sensations of warm water and soap are appearing. While listening to music, notice the awareness in which the sounds are arising. While talking with a friend, notice the awareness in which both your words and their words are appearing. This isn't a practice you do in addition to your life. It becomes a way of living your life from the recognition of what you most fundamentally are. The neuroscience validates what the wisdom traditions have always taught. Your true nature is not the small, separate self that your thoughts construct. Your true nature is the open, aware, peaceful consciousness in which all experience arises. This isn't something you need to achieve. It's something you need to recognize. And this recognition is available right now, in this moment, as you're listening to these words. Not as a future goal, but as your present reality. You know what's interesting about everything we've explored today? Most people will listen to this information, feel inspired, maybe even have moments of recognition, and then go back to living completely identified with their mental noise. They'll treat these insights like interesting concepts rather than doorways into direct experience. But there's something I haven't shared yet that changes everything about how this recognition deepens and stabilizes in daily life. Something about how this shift in identity from thoughts to awareness transforms not just your inner experience, but your actual relationships with other people in ways that seem almost impossible until you experience it directly. The research on this particular aspect is so compelling, so paradigm-shifting, that it deserves its own complete exploration. Make sure you watch the next video that appears on your screen, because we're going to dive into territory that most contemplative teachers and neuroscientists are just beginning to understand. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.